Right now, I am officially unemployed, legally jobless, after leaving a relatively safe, stable corporate finance job in London. The plan is to take a career break, 3 months, a self-gifted sabbatical, if you will. So let's talk through the decision. To introduce myself, I am Lucinda, I'm 31, and I have been working non-stop full-time for the past almost a decade now. I'm a qualified accountant. I started in Big Four and then moved into industry. By all accounts, I have been living what my teen self thought that a relatively successful career path looked like. But this year I really hit a wall. I handed my notice in back in April, 3 months ago, and that decision had been a really long time in the making. By spring this year, my mental health was kind of just hanging on. I was more exhausted. I was crying quite a lot, absolutely nothing sometimes. And the Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday scaries were real. I was struggling to enjoy my free time. I was struggling to turn up as, my best capable self at work. My brain was fogged, anxious, tired, and I hated feeling that way. Now, I'm no stranger to hard work and working long hours. And I know that finance jobs typically tend to have peaks and troughs throughout the year. And I even had really nice colleagues in the main. I tried to prioritize looking after myself, eat healthy, get lots of sleep, and go out for a walk, touch some grass, have some fresh air. But I really just wasn't coping very well, and I couldn't pull out of that, and I couldn't healthy habit my way out of it. The weight of my working week was really dragging me down, and I was reaching my limit, and I just needed a change. I don't think I was depressed by any means, and I certainly don't want to come across all woe is me. I was reaching burnout, however, whatever my personal threshold is, and unfortunately I don't think that's an uncommon experience. I think people will reach, at least in certain periods of their life, feeling exhausted and tired or overwhelmed. Despite knowing that, when I looked around, I couldn't help but see people in work, in my life, on social media, who seemed to be handling a lot better than me. I've really had to force myself to have better awareness and a little bit more kindness towards myself and what my own capacity is for that day, week, month. If you are looking around and thinking the same thing, why is everyone coping so much better than I am? Just give yourself a little bit of grace, the way you would a friend, less judgment. It's something that I'm definitely trying to get a bit better at being nicer to myself. In some ways lowering the expectations to a more realistic level. We're aiming for softer lives over here, but it's so much easier said than done. And just to clarify, that can still mean being really intentionally productive and also ambitious. But that also means taking note of when your body and your mind is saying to take 5. So anyways, I accepted where I was at. I was struggling, I was unhappy, and I felt quite trapped, golden handcuffs and all that. And I think I'm quite a risk adverse person. But on the other hand, I was looking around and thinking, is this all I get for putting myself through this? The paychecks just felt less and less worth it as the months went by. I was craving downtime, freedom, creativity, enjoyment, escape, and even just the power to control my own schedule again. Maybe I'm asking way too much of life, but I just felt like I needed a pause, and I needed to step off the continuous cycle of wake up, get stressed, get tired, and then repeat. Eventually I kind of said screw it to my own fears and judgments and what my perception of other people's judgments would be as well. For better or for worse, I quit with absolutely nothing lined up. It was calculated and it was planned for, but to me personally, it was absolutely terrifying still and a little bit exhilarating. My emotions were absolutely like all over the shop at that point. And, I had been out of balance, out of whack for months. So after a little time, gradually I decompressed and the relief set in. I guess in hindsight, I have asked myself quite often, could I have done more? Should I have done more? I mean, the financially sensible thing to do would have been to either wait for kind of things to calm down, see what happened, and maybe started job hunting then, or even when I put my notice in, when things started to calm down a little bit, start job hunting then. And I probably could have, but I guess I have to keep reminding myself that at the time I decided to quit, and that was a really big decision for me personally, at least, that I did not have the capacity to job hunt. And that is why I made the decision to take a career break. I was too exhausted and I didn't want to jump ship to another company out of desperation. I really want my next career move to be something that I am excited and step towards rather than just escaping my last place. Honestly, no judgment here. If you've got to do what you got to do to keep yourself afloat, I totally get it. Yeah, honestly, I think I felt like I would do better if I took a minute to decompress. Because let's be real, job hunting, LinkedIn, recruiters, interviews, it's all like a part-time job in and of itself. It takes so much brain power and time and energy, and it's stressful. So you really need to be in a good place to handle it well and do a good job. I also maybe selfishly, maybe lazily wanted a career break. It was something that I, as soon as I had the idea, clutched onto with both hands and I won't let go. I really want to enjoy myself for a few months and having a few months to really explore and rediscover. And I aim to come back better for doing it. So the issue that I found when I quit was coming up with a good response to people's questions of, naturally first they ask, oh, where are you going? What have you got lined up? So I had to come up with a really good corporate appropriate response of saying, nothing. I am taking a career break. And that sounds so simple, but it has honestly taken me months to be able to phrase it that simply and accept people's response from that. I was really self-conscious about telling people that for some reason. And I felt like I needed to justify my desire to take time off, almost like say, oh, it's okay, I've got XYZ plan in the works. So, I'll still be like a productive human being. I think the term unemployed has quite bad connotations. I don't know, in the UK at least. I don't know what it's like anywhere else. I definitely got in my own head about it. My perception was that, traditionally back in the day at least, people kind of perceived taking a career break, you had to justify it because you were either like caring for kids, caring for an elderly relative, or insert justification here. These days it feels much more normalized, and especially on social media, every man and his dog are going off traveling for a few months and, finding themselves on a beach in Bali while meditating. And it's not a career ender. So I take comfort in that. Anyway, traveling right now is not for me. I have dog care responsibilities that I share. And honestly, I want to stay at home. That's another thing that I felt like I needed to justify and explain, and that people might find a bit weird. I want to be a free-range human at home, enjoying my own home, keeping costs down, surrounded by my support network, and grounded in my usual everyday routine. I actually really crave stability and a safe space from which to build back up my energy, creativity, curiosity, craft skills, fitness. There's so much that I can do from home that I'm really excited about. So anyway, I feel like that's more of a North Star feeling of direction than a concrete roadmap, because I don't know what's next and how to get there, but it's an experiment. To be completely honest, it still feels a little bit wild, a bit reckless, a bit anxiety inducing. Suddenly my financial future instability is uncertain. And, everyone says, after all, the job market isn't good. And it hasn't been for a long time, feels like it's never good. And even the structure of my week isn't dictated anymore. And I've been craving free time and control of my own life for so long. And then being presented with it is actually quite overwhelming. And it's almost like I don't want to squander the time. It's so precious. I've also had to battle feelings of it being a bit lavish, a bit self-indulgent, selfish, a bit potentially like lazy or externally perceived as such, taking a career break, especially one at home. Like, am I really allowed to take time away from responsible career building, putting money in my retirement account, and contributing to the government's GDP metrics? Like, ultimately, yes. As ridiculous as it sounds, those things are important, and they are things that I have spent a lot of my 20s prioritizing. Obviously not the GDP metrics, that's ridiculous, but I have felt like some of my 20s I spent kind of sacrificing things, pursuing some sort of elusive feeling of financial security that I thought would arrive at some stage, that I thought would come from the usual steps. Pass exams, get a good job, save money, get on the housing ladder, save more money, put it in retirement, don't forget about that. But for me now, I really think it's time to take stock and reprioritize, to pause the toxic kind of productivity mindset and constant corporate pressure, hustle. Quality time off is sadly a financially bought luxury these days to most people. So I ran the calculations like a good accountant, and I saved and planned for this, to take a career break. So I'm doing so relatively sensibly, if you will, that, I've saved up more than 3 months of living expensive, obviously, to ensure that, I can pay my half of the bills still and I don't become a burden on my partner who I share a flat with. So I'm super privileged in that regard that I was able to save up enough. I've always kind of had a emergency fund for years now. That was a good old step as well that they recommend in anything you look at personal finance wise. So that's what I've had, and I've never used it, but I guess I realised at the start of this year that my well-being was kind of becoming the emergency. So I saved on top of that as well, a little bit before my notice period as well to top it up. So I was doing this very calculated and well planned. I'm also quite grateful that I am in a position, like caring responsibilities wise. I don't have anyone, I don't have kids, I don't have any relatives to care for. So I'm very lucky that I do have the freedom to do with what I please. Although these two factors are quite reassuring and have ultimately enabled me to be willing to take a career break, I also don't think they totally alleviate the feelings of kind of existential dread, midlife crisis vibes, if you will. Like, what am I doing? How do I not waste my time? What if no one ever employs me again? But at least the bills are covered for a while and no one's seriously relying on me. So I've got time to work everything out. Anyways, that was a load to air out. So thank you. And I guess, does anyone else feel similarly, or have you had the same experience? Because it is always nice to know you are not the only one going through something. Anyone who's experienced anything similar or can relate to anything I've said, please just give me a shout in the comments. It's really nice to hear you're not alone. You're not the only one feeling lost. If you take anything away from this as well, it's also to be nice to yourself and give yourself the kind of non-judgmental perspective that you would a friend, and don't fear other people's judgments. I think I've been doing that for far too long. I'm sure most people do. Anyways, thank you for sticking with me and watching, and I'll see you next time, I guess.